Thank you for joining us. We're here on location at the Orlando Convention Center for the FETC conference. Our program is about education and the need for technology to improve and enhance education in general. Our guests today include Mike Eason, the president of FETC, and Ilene Rosenthal, who we will speak with following these messages.
We started with a blank slate, and then we added you. Because you wanted a tablet that felt perfect in your hands. Dual cameras so you can capture everything. You wanted Beats audio. And a tablet that runs Android, the most popular mobile operating system in the world. Introducing the Slate 7 from HP, the game-changing 7-inch Android tablet. Because for you, getting it exactly right matters.
With us now are Ilene Rosenthal and Barbara Nemko. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much. Well, here we are at FETC, and what you're doing is so very interesting for early childhood especially. Tell us a little bit about Footsteps to Brilliance.
Thank you. Well, Footsteps to Brilliance was developed 4 years ago when it became clear that mobile technology could be a game changer for early learning. The issues that we were dealing with at Footsteps to Brilliance are issues that are really front and center in the United States today. According to the latest research, 46% of children in the United States enter kindergarten at risk of failure. 88% of those children never catch up, and 61% of those children have no books in their home. So it became clear that unless we could find a way to reach children early so that they don't come into kindergarten remedial, right? And move them up to third grade reading level, which is really a benchmark, proficiency at third grade, that we were going to have serious problems in the United States. So that's kind of the basis behind Footsteps to Brilliance.
What a fascinating concept, and of course, very, very interesting how essential those first years are compared to, in fact, what occurs later. Tell us a little bit more about this challenge and the need to make sure that children have a greater vocabulary before they join students perhaps from better equipped environments.
The research, there's some seminal research. It's by two researchers, Hart and Risley. And what they found is that when they looked at-risk children's homes versus working class children's homes versus affluent homes, that there was a 30 million word gap. By the time an at-risk child or an impoverished child reaches the age of 4, they've heard 30 million fewer words than their affluent counterpart. When they arrive at kindergarten, they only have 25% of the vocabulary they need in order to succeed. So it became very clear that what we needed to do is really create systemically an environment from the very beginning in the home and in the school where these children were going to get exposed to the right kind of academic vocabulary and print, where they could really have access to all of it.
I would like to point out to our audience that we do have this interview taking place here at FETC, and there are other sessions nearby, so we apologize for the noise. Barbara, you are a superintendent of schools. Yes. What's your perspective on this?
We have been spending all our time since I got into education decades ago trying to close the achievement gap. And there is a tendency to blame teachers and schools for creating an achievement gap when, as Ilene has just documented, kids come to school with an achievement gap. They're really entering kindergarten about 2 years behind. And it's cumulative, so if you start out behind and you're not able to follow what's going on in school, you develop a whole learned helplessness. It's too hard for me, I can't do it, reading is too hard, I don't understand, and that just gets bigger and bigger. So when I heard about Footsteps and saw how little children reacted to looking at something on an iPad, how engaged they were, how fascinating it was clear to me that this was something very important for us to get to our kids. Parents want to help their children, but they don't all know how. And if English is not your first language, and if in fact you don't read even in Spanish, which is the case for many of our families, you can't be reading to your children. Middle-class parents and affluent parents start talking to kids the day we bring those babies home from the hospital. We narrate the day for them. And when I think about how I used to talk to the baby, from the minute she woke up in the morning with, "Good morning, sunshine. How are you today? Do you know what we're going to do today? After we get you a clean diaper, we're going to go have breakfast." And then, and on and on. So all those words are happening. In many households, that doesn't occur. And learning to read is basically decoding talk written down. If you don't understand what the talk is, because you haven't had the experiences and you don't know the words, then you can't learn to read, because decoding is like putting something in front of me in German. I might be able to figure out how to pronounce it, but I'll have no idea what it means. And there's even newer research from Stanford University talking about the automaticity factor. So if you test a child and you say, "Look at the picture of the dog," and you show a cat, a dog, a kangaroo, a giraffe, the difference in the time it takes the middle class and affluent child to look at the picture of the dog is a few seconds or tenths of a second faster than children who have to process it more slowly. So then if you say the dog is on the sofa, the kid who knows what the dog is immediately looks at the right picture and knows that that object must be the sofa, because the dog is on something. But if the child is still processing which is the dog, then they miss the whole sofa part. So you can see how it gets to be cumulative. And this is fabulous for making that change.
And you identify the problem so articulately. But let's talk about the technology. How do you address it? What is Footsteps to Brilliance doing?
So the interesting thing here is that having worked for 22 years with school systems, we recognized that before we even look at what kind of apps, what kind of programs we're going to put on the system, we needed a system that could reach everybody. I've always worked with connecting school to home, that there really has to be this linkage. And so we started out by building a platform that allowed us to put any kind of content assessment, professional development, parent involvement activities on, and overnight scale it to any device, so that you can be on an Apple device, you can be on an Android device, you can be on a traditional computer, you can be on a 10-inch screen, a 4-inch screen, it doesn't matter. And we also knew that we had to have the ability to be, for parents to use this offline, that they didn't necessarily have broadband connectivity at home. And so that as long as you can download the program, you can interact with it offline, and then when you're online, you don't even have to log in. Just opening the app, all that data will go up, within a few seconds. And so that you could really have data to track the success of every student and to differentiate when differentiation was needed.
This is very fascinating, of course. I'd like to ask you, actually, how long have you been doing this?
The company has been in existence for 4 years. But the first time that we actually piloted to see whether or not the technology worked was with Dr. Nemko's school in Napa. So she might want to tell you a little bit about that.
Please.
Well, we decided to do a pilot with 18 students who were going to enter kindergarten in August, had never been to preschool, and were predominantly Spanish speaking. It was a summer boot camp, 4 weeks, which we've been doing over the years, but what we introduced for the first time were iPads and Footsteps to Brilliance. And if you ever want to see ducks to water, you have to see 4-year-olds on an iPad using Footsteps. It was so intuitive for them. It was so natural for them. And what's amazing about this is it does what parents do, read stories to them. So the child selects a story, and the story can be read in English or Spanish, which is fabulous. And as the story is read, the words are highlighted in the color red, so that the child can begin to develop that visual sound correspondence. It also is animated and it's musical. So the child gets to control what's happening. And if you press the screen, who knows what might happen? A puppet might come out of a drawer. The puppet may sing and dance and wiggle and move, and the kids are delighted with that. So at the end of the story, they say what your children and grandchildren say to you when you finish reading a book, again, again. And the nice part is that while mom, dad, grandma, or grandpa may get tired after the 75th time they've read the story, the iPad never gets tired. It cheerfully reads it again and again and again, and then it asks comprehension questions. So from a school point of view, the kid drops and drags, and if the child gets it wrong, it says, whoops, try again. The child can get it wrong 7 times, and there's never impatience in the iPad speech, whoops, try again. But when they get it right, wow, that's wonderful. So it's always rewarding for the child, plus they realize that persistence pays, because even if you take a long time to get it right, at the end, wow, that's wonderful. So they're very excited to use it, and they want to keep using it. There are also so many different books, new libraries being added all the time, games, it teaches colors, it teaches phonics and sound correspondence, sight words, so many things, all in this one package. And now, after we saw the success that first year in 2011 with 18 kids, we've been rolling it out and spreading it out to other schools and other districts. And this year, we are going to go live with this for every family in Napa County with a preschool child, that they will have access to it at home. So you can have it on your smartphone, and most every family these days has a smartphone. They don't need a tablet. And if you're in the supermarket and you're online and your child is pulling at your leg, I want to go home, you have a story or an activity or a game for them to do.
Right there on the spot. Absolutely fantastic. Amazing what technology enables.
Yes.
How are you doing with distribution and getting this implemented in more and more areas, more districts?
Well, it's been a fairly smooth rollout, increasing the number of classes that have been using it in the school. What will be interesting is the rollout that we're going to do for all the families. And we have a whole plan in place for making sure all the teachers, not just the teachers, know what this is, but all of the stakeholders, the family center groups, Head Start, everybody who touches families with preschool children, because there are lots of places that the families will go to for help and for guidance. So everybody is going to know. The mayors will know, the Board of Supervisors will know, everybody will know what is available for these families.
So from happy families to less fortunate families and children in situations where maybe they need assistance from the local authorities, your services are more and more crucial, actually.
Absolutely. And we've done some studies to see what improvements are made by using this, and the results have been absolutely fantastic. We use the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test to test children in expressive and receptive language, which are 2 key skills for learning how to read. And the gains were so impressive, they were statistically significant. We work with Touro University. So we know that we can get so many more children up to age 5 and age 6 level by kindergarten that we couldn't do before.
Ilene, you are aware of the fact that these issues and problems and challenges exist in other countries as well. Tell us of your plans perhaps to introduce Footsteps to Brilliance in other countries.
We've actually been approached by many people about that, especially in countries where they're very interested in learning English as a second language. But right now, our particular focus is really in the United States, where we have so many people who need this kind of an ability to help them to get their children up and running. And we're getting a wonderful response across the country. However, there are other people who are very interested in this, and they may take it, international.
Ilene, I understand that you visited Israel and have been following educational technology in that country as well. Tell us about your experiences in Israel.
Yes, well, first of all, Israel is such an amazing country, and the people are so amazing. But the thing that I learned is that the issues that we have in the United States, frankly, affect children everywhere. There are children who have learning disabilities, there are children who have dyslexia, there are children who need to improve their English, especially in Israel, where Hebrew, of course, is spoken, but you need to have a language that's more universal as well. And so this is the kind of program that could be helpful anywhere.
Absolutely. Before we conclude, Barbara, Give our audience some final comments as to your plans for the future.
Well, we're going to continue using early digital literacy as much as possible. Every child today sees their parents using devices. We are all staring at our phones all day and using our iPads, and kids want them. You can see 1-year-olds. I saw a 1-year-old being carried through Macy's the other day, and in her hand was her parents' iPhone, and she was flipping through it looking for pictures of herself. So anyone who thinks that we can ignore this technology with young children is living in a dream world. They know it, they want it. Second thing is that the people who are afraid of technology for early childhood are afraid because of the studies of screen time. But those studies were done on television. Television is an entirely different medium. It's passive. Something is happening over there and you just sit here and you have no ability to affect it unless you turn it off. This, the child controls, and kids love that. We saw a marvelous presentation here at FETC yesterday, and there was a picture of a 1-year-old looking at an iPad, having a marvelous time. And then that child looking at a magazine and just not sure why it wasn't doing anything. What kind of stupid thing is this? It's boring. So kids are using it. We have the opportunity to take that interest, that engagement, and engagement is 90% of achievement success. If you're really engaged, and kids log in so many hours on this, doing footsteps, that we know it makes perfect sense why they're learning so much.
Barbara, this is really very fascinating and so well said. Ilene, give us a final comment.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, but what I think is so important here is that for years we have tried to work with individual children one at a time and not necessarily been able to get the entire community involved in early learning because there was a digital divide. There is no longer a digital divide. 80% of all parents own some kind of a smart device. As long as you can access that smartphone, that tablet, that computer, if it really doesn't matter if it's device agnostic, then what you can do is really scale, overnight turn on an entire community. And now you have everybody working towards the benefit of not only the child, but the society at large.
What a wonderful concept. I want to thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Wishing you a lot of success.
Thank you.
I'll be right back.